Welcome to Blaze News, the mandate day 66. I'm Jill Savage. Tonight on the agenda, the White House put up a new lawn display highlighting crimes committed by illegal immigrants. The display features mugshots and the crime that each illegal was arrested for. But MSNBC, they did cover the story. Here's what they had to say about it.
White House has put up about 100 posters of what they say are unauthorized immigrants who have been arrested for violent crimes. You can see them there. They put them up on the driveway of the White House. If you look here, that's the West Wing just at the forefront, the executive mansion itself to the left. But what's particularly noteworthy about this location is it is right directly behind the positions where TV correspondents do their hits from the White House lawn. So therefore, no matter what network you're on, that includes MSNBC, if you're doing a hit from the White House right now, those pictures will be behind you. The White House doing a briefing in about a half hour about what they're doing here.
Yeah, I took my picture right there when we were there last week. But ICE was continuing to crack down on illegal immigration in Colorado. Early yesterday morning, over 100 illegal immigrants were detained in a massive raid at an underground nightclub that is known to be a frequent hangout of MS-13 gang members. Now, authorities also found drugs and evidence of prostitution and multiple firearms. At a press conference with Caroline Leavitt, border czar Tom Homan spoke about how many illegal immigrants currently live in the United States.
Well, first of all, how many illegal aliens I think in the United States? At least 20 million. Here's where'd you come up with that number? We've been speaking about 12 million for 20 years. We know we got 10.5 that we know of came to the border. How many don't we know of? I talked about known gotaways at 2 million. How many unknown gotaways do we have? Like between the Big Bend sector in Texas where there's no technology, how many 1,000 people dig across through there? We wouldn't know. We would know now. But, you know, so I would venture over 20 million. But your question is, last count, last I looked, there was about 700,000 illegal aliens with criminal charges walking the streets of this country. 700,000. And that's what we're looking for now. That's what we're prioritizing. Them and national security threats.
Meanwhile, President Trump weighed in on the Biden auto pen scandal. On Truth Social, he wrote, "Why did the auto pen give Schiff a pardon? Biden knew nothing about it. Who operated the auto pen? They almost destroyed our country. They should be in jail." Now, President Trump also gave an update on curbing the income tax. He wrote, "When tariffs cut in, many people's income taxes will be substantially reduced, maybe even completely eliminated. The External Revenue Service is happening," and to that we all applaud. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent gave an update on Trump's trade negotiations with other countries. Take a look.
Your thoughts about the U.S.-China standoff right now?
Well, Brian, first of all, it's all the president, especially on the 18 important trading partners. We're doing bespoke deals, and he's going to be intimately involved in every one. 2 weeks ago, when we had the Japanese delegation come in, he started it in the Oval, and then we took them into the negotiating room. So he laid the groundwork, told them personally how important the relationship was, but also how important a fair deal for the American people is.
We have an update on the deadly helicopter crash near Reagan National Airport. Now, in January, during a training exercise, an Army Black Hawk helicopter collided with an American Airlines flight, and 67 people were killed in that crash. Now we know that the New York Times has revealed that Captain Rebecca Lobach, she's the pilot of the helicopter, she failed to follow her instructor's orders to descend moments before colliding with the plane. Now, finally, we have some good news for the MAHA crowd. PepsiCo is reportedly working to replace all artificial colors with natural ingredients following RFK Jr.'s ban on synthetic food dyes. Now, this impacts all of their products, including Doritos, Lay's, and Cheetos. There's going to be a lot more coming here for you on the mandate in the next day, because we are going to have Dr. Jay Bhattacharya, director of NIH. We're going to get his take on that. But for now, let's go ahead and bring in Blaze News editor-in-chief Matthew Peterson. There's a lot going on with MAHA. I'm very excited to get to the interview with Dr. Jay Bhattacharya tomorrow.
Oh, yeah. I mean, this is just the beginning, right, of a long, glorious rise of MAHA. And really what you see with the dyes is just one small example, because we have to re-examine our relationship with corporate, food and corporate products wholesale. And so this is just one obvious thing where you say children really shouldn't be having this. And with someone like Dr. J coming in to take over NIH, there's a whole host of issues. COVID obviously is huge. Vaccines with COVID is huge. But re-examining how basically we've been overtaken by corporations who don't necessarily have the best health interests of the populace in mind.
I will say I usually harp on Republicans because they're terrible at messaging. And most of the time, that's true. The Trump administration is trying to change my tune on this with the signs of the illegal immigrants, the mugshots that are there, that were placed right there, as they say, on the White House lawn, leading right behind where all of the media, if you've ever seen the green tents, right, that's on the other side of that. That's where the media will do their hits, right outside of the White House. A brilliant move to wake up for everybody in America, just see all of these signs of all of the illegals. You can't say, oh, this is an isolated incident. We shouldn't just look at this one person like they did with the MS-13 gang member.
Well, as you mentioned, Jill, it's especially poignant for us. We were just there. We just missed it. I would have loved to have seen them, but I would really have loved to have seen a lot of those journalists having to deal with the fact that those signs are positioned directly behind them as they chime in, to the rest of America. And this just shows how fun this White House is, how different it is, how they really are thinking outside the box, letting all kinds of people in to interview, not playing the access game with only the big dogs who have disgraced themselves in journalism. And here they're in your face. They're not going to let you forget what is actually going on. And the best part about it to me is it's not a stunt. It's actually showing you reality. These are real people. This is really who we're talking about deporting.
And Tom Homan coming out and saying, 12 million, this is the number we're going to go with. This is the number that we've been saying, for decades, I feel like at this point in time, 12 million. Except then what happened with all of the wide open borders under the Biden administration? How many are we even willing to add to that number now? This
is one of my favorite clips of the day, simply because I remember being gaslit on this for years. I hate that word, but these people would just lie about it all the time. And if you brought it up, this has been going on for a long time. They've been underplaying the numbers for decades. And if you brought it up, oh, you were a crazy conspiracy. We all, the experts, know. And at this point, the cat's out of the bag. It's obvious that there are at least 20 million. And that's exactly right. And we don't even know the numbers. We haven't been keeping track. And we know why. They've been flooding the country for reasons other than creating good citizens. So we have to say the truth. And he's saying the truth. And that's really important.
Well, Matt, we have made it back to our Dallas studios, but our Chris Bedford is still out there in Washington, D.C., and he'll give us his congressional forecast just ahead. We know the tariffs are here and all the grocery store prices, they are climbing again, but that's not happening at GoodRanchers.com because they have 100% American meat. So their supply chain means that they don't have to deal with the tariff price hikes, and they have unbeatable quality that you can count on. So right now, when you subscribe, you get free meat for life. You get your choice of ground beef, wild-caught salmon, seed oil-free chicken nuggets, or bacon in every box. And that's over $300 of free meat that every year you say subscribe. Now, Good Ranchers, it's not just delicious, it's smart because they have all of the pre-trimmed vacuum sealed cuts. It's going to save you and your family money because the average family throws away $500 of meat a year. So don't wait. Go lock in your price right now. Lock in that free meat and take $40 off with my code Jill at checkout. Visit GoodRanchers.com today. Don't leave your food up to chance. Lock in a secure supply of American meat at GoodRanchers.com. Claim $40 off and free meat for life with code Jill. GoodRanchers.com. American meat delivered. Congress is back in session this week in Washington, D.C. So what can we expect to see them get done this week? Let's bring in Chris Bedford. He's still back there holding the fort down in D.C. He's going to break it down for us. Now, of course, you know, Congress can be in session. We can't all be there at the same time. It's going to be too much awesomeness in the city at once. So we had to leave. Matt and I had to come back to Dallas to get this done. But you're still fighting the good fight there in D.C. So what can Speaker Johnson actually get off of the ground this week, if anything?
Certainly nothing this week. I mean, the Senate has a couple of things where they'll be able to potentially do the second round of confirmations for the Trump appointees, but they're not going to. They've already said that they're going to wait until July or August, that their plates are already full for right now for this session. You have to wait till after July 4th for anything like that to actually happen. And of course, you have the August recess. But right now, what members are working on, and what they're talking to Rebecca about and talking to me about, is Doge cuts, something that's important to them. No tax on tips. Taxes in general, try to get that done now, which would be not done now, but done over the next month or so, which would be months and months ahead of where Congress usually gets anything at all accomplished, which is December 30th, right before the New Year's holiday, or right before Christmas sometimes, December 23rd, where they actually are able to do a little bit and get it done because of the deadline. Usually it's deadlines that actually push Congress to do anything. They're like how I was in college. You may have 2 weeks to write a paper, but you're staying up all night to write that paper the night before because you procrastinate. We have an entire august body that acts like that. They're trying to get ahead of that. And in this time that they have back before their next large vacation later this summer, the number one thing is going to be reconciliation and what they can get into reconciliation, how they can get the Senate to do it and still operate within the pretty strict rules of reconciliation legislation. And that budgets to the president's desk so you can get funding for ICE, funding for Customs and Border Patrol in particular.
Chris, how much of the divisions that we've been talking about within Republican ranks are we seeing now? Is this thing just moving along? I mean, you said they're writing the paper. Is anyone fighting about what should be in there behind scene, or is it moving pretty smoothly?
Oh, there's still fighting, as you can well guess. There's still plenty of fighting, and within Republican circles, the president has largely so far been able to count on the Freedom Caucus, despite some behind-the-scenes fighting, despite some behind-the-scenes argument and some rather high tempers. A lot of the White House legislative team has been handling this. They've done a pretty deft job, a pretty fantastic job. Another big sticking point that's coming up is going to be the state and local taxes, that the SALT, essentially, that a lot of the blue state Republicans are really obsessing over. They're asking for $100,000, write-off of up to $100,000 in your taxes to state and local governance put into this legislation. And that's to pay for things like if you're a congressman upstate New York, or you're a congressman and in some other place that is generally a high tax area where the state and local governments are taking that massive of amount out of your paycheck. They're saying you shouldn't be taxed on that. It's going to be very difficult for them to be able to get that through reconciliation within the parameters that have been set. It's basically a no-go for the conservatives who say this is you're fine if you're making that much money, that you have to pay $100,000 to your town and state. You don't need it from us. And also, we're not here to bail out blue states from massive tax bills. But there's a number of moderates, Republicans, and rhinos, as a lot of folks call them, who are standing to their guns on this, sticking to their guns. They're saying we're not going to back down and nothing gets our vote without this. However, in my experience, this caucus of the Republican Party derives their only source of power and authority from their relationship with power and authority. They're not like the Freedom Caucus that's willing to tie them to blow up the railroad tracks. Their relationship with the Speaker, their relationship with the White House is the only way they're able to get anything done. So in the end, they very, very, very often blink in the face of a showdown.
Well, I feel like during our entire lives, all three of us, right? One of the fights that always comes up is like Medicaid, Medicare entitlements. Do we think that that's going to come up again this time around? Because right now they try and say that they're serious about the cuts, right, and spending cuts, but these are the issues that people care about a lot. They're near and dear to a lot of people's hearts, Chris.
Yes, and the pessimist in me says the ended up compromise is going to be not a lot of cuts. That it's going to be very difficult for them to get that by. The Democrats are ready to pounce, as they say, to be able to attack anyone who's seen as touching these, even though it's waste and fraud. At the end of the day, it's not going to even have the president's backing to any kind of a significant reform to any entitlements. That's not what he ran on in 2016, 2020, or 2024. It's not what he really cares about. There's plenty of Republican presidents who have felt the same. They've got their focus and the things that they want to get done, and you're not allowed to do anything in this legislation that will jeopardize the border. And they get very annoyed when people who are fiscal conservatives and fiscal hawks come out and say, hey, this budget is completely unsustainable. We can't even service the debt on it. And it's in the way of the actual agenda that they were elected to go forward with and to govern with. So you can see both sides here, and the frustration is still building. But I suspect that if you're looking for any kind of meaningful reform in our entitlement system, not this year.
Okay, everyone needs to, bunker down for this. We have a blast from the past coming to us right now, this week, articles of impeachment. We have a Democratic congressman introducing articles of impeachment in the year of our Lord 2025. I believe we've seen this movie a few times before. This guy is talking about when Trump ignores the Constitution, Congress, and the courts, he's not fighting for America. He's tearing it down and endangering our, you guessed it, democracy. What do you make of this? It's coming back. The zombie.
It's a Hail Mary pass from the congressman himself. He's facing a very serious primary challenge. He's embattled. His approval numbers amongst his own voters are not very high. And he's trying to do anything he can to show that he's a progressive leader and he's the right person for this job. And he's the person who's going to take on Donald Trump. And at the same time, you also have folks like Governor Pritzker over in Illinois, who's just a wild man. I mean, it's kind of insane to see somebody that wealthy attacking Trump for being wealthy when he's a governor himself. But that's the way he operates. And he's out there now saying we need to have Resistance 2.0. There can be no peace for Republicans. They must be investigated. They must be harassed in the streets. They must be impeached. I think what we're starting to see is Democrat frustrations bubbling over. But I don't see any appetite for it in the streets. It doesn't seem like the summer of riots that they've had in the past and they've been able to take advantage of. So the mood in the country right now is the same as it was at that time. There's always, as one reporter I was talking to earlier today said, it seems like the United States is always one particularly grisly police shooting away from that sort of thing changing. But right now, those Democrats are trying to just relive and run a sequel. It's going straight to home video. It's not even coming to theaters.
Yeah, how sad is it, though, for the Democrats that you can't even get your base riled up for some good old-fashioned summer rioting? I mean, there's never an Antifa paycheck that'll go to waste here. If they want it done, Bedford, we know that it will. But how deflated and demoralized do the Democrats have to be at this point that they can't even get people to care about what's going on right now on their side?
I mean, our own Julio is dying to go cover these
waiting.
riots. He wants them to happen so he can cover them, but
I know, and I need new sneakers. I hear him. I can see it. But the Democrats haven't been able to find traction with anything. I mean, right now the big hope is the judges. Well, they have. They've got the big difficulty here of these judges standing athwart a program that is extremely popular with the American people. And as we learned after January 6th, their attempts to make these sorts of things different. Like, I know you care about this, but this is sacred institutions of our democracy, haven't actually flown. And their ability to their repetition that no one is above the law over the last many years, and it comes back to bite them in these sorts of things. I mean, you've got Representative Ro Khanna, who's actually an interesting guy, out there saying videos that there could be no peace until this judge is released, one of the judges who was arrested. Well, the judge was released. Of course the judge was released on her own recognizance, but she's still being charged. And you end up once again seeing elected Democratic representatives defending an illegal immigrant who was in front of a courtroom for hitting somebody 30 times over telling him to turn down the loud music in the face. And it has repeated violent criminal past as well. And that's just I tell you that as an example of how desperate Democrats are to just cling to anything that will get them some traction beyond simply the wine moms who form a lot of their core constituency and are outraged every single day, turning on Rachel Maddow. They haven't been able to get outside of that. And I think one of the main reasons for that is because they haven't been talking to any of the real issues that the American people actually demanded. You kind of need to seize on those things, illegal immigration and the economy, in order to actually reach where the electorate is right now. And these special niche faculty lounge issues aren't doing it.
Well, we have to thank Chris Bedford for a glorious week in Washington, D.C., especially because every time we come to town, we disrupt his entire life with a barrel of work and wildness from White House to the Tiki Bar. It was a great time, and I'm sure our thanks also go to Sarah Bedford for putting up with our shenanigans.
Big shout out to Sarah. Thanks for letting us disrupt the entire week out there.
He appreciates that, and come back soon, but not too soon.
Not too soon. That Tiki Bar, though, is absolutely going to be needed to be added to the Bedford Bar Crawl. Whenever this is tweeted out, all this stuff, if you're looking, Bedford, you're going to need to add that one on the list for sure.
Perfect. Deal.
All right. We'll see you soon.
See you then.
We'll have Matt's exclusive interview from a Trump administration official from our time at the White House right after this. What we can tell you from just being in Washington, D.C., you can tell the conservatives are winning. The Democrats are deflated right now. People are waking up and we can feel the momentum. It's finally shifting and it feels pretty good, right? But we know that the fight is not over, and that's exactly why BlazeTV exists. We want to cut through all the noise that's out there, and we want to bring you the stories that really matter, and the stories, honestly, the corporate media won't touch. So when you subscribe, you're not just watching, you're actually standing with us in this movement. Now, it's just $8 a month when you use the code BNT at checkout. So go to blazetv.com/BNT right now. Use the code BNT and save $20 off an annual plan. So let's keep winning together. I'm not tired of winning. It's Blaze TV, unfiltered, unafraid, on demand. We just got back from Washington, D.C., and while we were there, Matt was able to sit down with Bill Pulte. He's the Federal Housing Finance Agency Director, and they discussed all the fraud that was found in Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac and the subsequent government takeover and how to prevent another crash like the Great Recession in 2008 and so much more. Watch.
All right, so the first question we have to ask the director of the Federal Housing Finance Agency, by the way, we're going to cut through a lot of complicated issues in this interview, and weave through it. And I want to give you your chance to describe a little bit of history and a little bit of what this outfit does. I think a lot of times the basics get lost in these interviews, and they need to be brought back to them. So first off, what do you think the mission of this agency is?
Well, Federal Housing, FHFA, is in charge of Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, and my view on it is that we are here to restore the American dream. You know, for the last 4 years under President Biden, there was a significant amount of inflation and nobody could afford a home. And so what we're really focused on is restoring the American dream of home ownership and making sure that people can actually afford to buy a home.
Right, and what are the biggest obstacles in the way of that right now?
Well, for the last 4 years, you've had rampant inflation, and you know what happens when you have inflation? You have mortgage rates that go up significantly, and we saw mortgage rates skyrocket. You know, under President Trump's first term, there was a ability to buy a home in this country. You know, people had good earnings, but they had low inflation, and they were able to buy a home. We're trying to restore that. We will restore it, and under President Trump's leadership, I'm very confident that Americans will be able to afford homes again.
This is something that affects everyone in America in a very intimate way, and a lot of times the relationship between, you know, that experience of being able to buy a home or not, the symbol of the American dream, is impacted by a bunch of causal factors behind the scenes that are very complicated and no one understands a lot about. Can you speak to that a little bit? Like, one thing that might be a good way to start is, what's your understanding of the history of Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac?
My understanding is that there was a lot of fraud and a lot of waste and abuse that went on in 2008. And as a result, the government had to take over Fannie and Freddie. And so what we're focused on is getting rid of the fraud, getting rid of the waste, getting rid of the abuse to make sure that these entities are stronger than ever before. These companies, I don't know if you know this, not a lot of people have known this, but we're going to be talking about it, makes billions and billions of dollars a year worth of profits. And it's very important that we be good stewards of the money that Fannie and Freddie are making. And the fact that we had this massive crash in 2008 can never happen again. And so that's what we're very focused on, is making sure that that will never happen again.
So speak to the fraud, because you've made waves very quickly. You've angered a lot of people in the Congress already, and you've dealt with fraud from the get-go. So what does that look like?
Well, I don't know how much we've angered people as much as we are just saying, look, we want to get rid of fraud. We want to get rid of fraud, waste, and abuse. We actually put a tip line together, and I appreciate you bringing it up, a tip line where anybody can submit tips to us, fraud tips, and that way we can get rid of this mortgage fraud. Because to your point, if we can get rid of fraud, we can lower the cost. And I think there's way more mortgage fraud than we think. I think there's way more insurance fraud than we think. You know, people don't think about insurance fraud, but when you go and you commit mortgage fraud, many times you're committing insurance fraud as well. So I think we've barely cracked the surface, unfortunately, with the amount of mortgage fraud going on.
Give me more of a sense of that. I mean, what does this look like? What's the scope of it? I mean, how much money are we talking about?
Well, from mortgage insurers and from other executives that I've talked to in the industry, you know, there's all types of fraud. People lying on their mortgage applications, people saying that they're going to occupy residences when they're not going to occupy residences, people overstating their income, people saying that they're going to do one thing with the property, but really they're going to do something else with it. And these are all the things that as a systemic regulator, we're very focused on, because we don't want people who can't afford a home or own a home, or people who are misrepresenting what they're doing, to be recklessly using multiple homes and you know, creating this problem that we had in 2008.
Right. Another issue that I think is fascinating. It really came up out of nowhere. It's not something I ever imagined, and a lot of Americans ever imagined would happen. Are the discriminatory policies that were put in place when it comes to housing in order to supposedly reverse discrimination. There was a large push among policymakers over the last 5-10 years to basically, under the guise of we're going to help out the poor, help some people over others.
Very well said. And I think that's where maybe some people have been angered, is that we've gotten rid of DEI. We've gotten rid of some of the race-based awards. I mean, people shouldn't, get something because they're white or because they're black or what have you. Everybody should be treated equally. And so we're really restoring justice, I believe, in these entities, and really focused on writing mortgages and getting mortgages to as many Americans as possible. And I'm very confident that under President Trump's leadership, we're going to be able to restore the American dream for as many Americans as possible.
Oh, I'm into that. So what does that look like when you get rid of DEI? Like, what does that mean practically within the agency?
Well, what they did was, in many of these places, in my opinion, was they came up with different names. And so they would call them Mission, and they would call them OMWI, which is actually something that we comply with in terms of a law. But they would, use these names. And by the way, we follow all the laws, we'll follow all the statutes, but they would use names to try to hide, different efforts. And again, we don't want to do anything that's racist. We don't want to do anything that's discriminatory, whether it's to one race or another. And so we've just very firmly have said, look, everybody should be treated equally, and our policies need to do that. And so we terminated the DEI executives at Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac.
Now, what's fascinating about that is that, I don't think that the vast majority of Americans agree with what you just said. There are probably, certain cronies who do not. But you have made changes. You've gotten rid of people as
Absolutely.
Well. And what was that about? What needed to be cleaned in terms of the House?
That's a great question. We've gotten rid of people not just for DEI, but also for fraudulent or misleading activity or facilitating fraud in some cases. And again, we're trying to really come in there and say, look, these companies need to be world-class companies. And under President Trump's leadership, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac will be great American icons once again. And I feel very confident that we can do that. But there can be no place for fraud. There can be no place for mortgage fraud. There can be no place for insurance fraud. And so I think, we're going to continue to make progress. But again, I'm very confident that we'll be able to reverse the last 4 years and get this thing headed in the right direction. I think we're on our way.
And so, put fraud aside, let's look to the future. On our way into the future, what does that look like? As chairman, Freddie, you're talking about, there's big talk in the air about what happens next.
Yeah, we oversee about $9 trillion of mortgages between Fannie and Freddie. About over 70% of U.S. mortgages go through these two great companies. But I think the best news is, not to get back to it, but it's just the facts of the matter, is we have a president who is going to, in my view, get inflation under control, who is doing amazing things with tariffs, who's going to get this economy booming again, who's going to get people earning again. And these are all things that help the American dream. So it's not to say we have an easy job. We have a tough job. But if there's one person to be leading it, it's President Trump. And I'm very confident he's going to get this done.
So in terms of conservatorship, we're looking at something that is a large government company.
Well, a lot of people talk about privatization of these two entities and exiting conservatorship and whatnot. We're really focused right now on making sure that these companies are world class, that these are great American icons once again. There's been so much bloat going on, and really focused right now on operational efficiencies. Now, everybody agrees, I think, that conservatorship shouldn't be forever. However, we need to be laser focused on making sure that if and when something were to be done, that mortgage rates didn't go up and that nothing would jeopardize the safety and soundness of the market.
So clean house, make it efficient first, and that's a larger problem that will be dealt with in the future.
We're going to clean house, and we're going to make sure that we also keep house with the people who are really good. There are some really good people in these companies. And so, we're elevating the people who are great, and we're saying, thank you to the ones who maybe aren't needed anymore. And again, restoring these two great companies, Fannie and Freddie, to greatness once again.
Make them great again. I like it.
Make Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac great again. We'll do it.
So how did you end up here? When you think about the trajectory of your career, and the preparation that you've had to come in and clean house, it strikes me that you have experience outside of government that might be valuable.
Yes, I spent my time buying, building, and growing companies, going in, partnering with management, getting rid of maybe some people who were doing a bad job and promoting those who were doing a good job. And so I've done that, and I've made quite a bit of money doing that on my own. But then in addition to that, I also served and was very active in my grandfather's business, Pulte Homes, where I was on the board there. It's one of the largest home builders in the country. So I think I have a unique view that under President Trump's leadership, we can get some of this stuff done and get Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac turned around. And they do need to be turned around, and they're well on the way to being turned around, frankly.
Well, I think it's amazing the action that's been taken so far. You can read it in the headlines already. But I have to ask you this because I'm curious every time I see this happen, when someone like yourself comes in and starts making changes. What are the differences so far? Because it's much easier in a sense, right, to go into a fully private operation and move around the deck chairs and make things more efficient. In the situation you're in, and anything that's related to the government in any way whatsoever, that's 10 times more difficult.
It's a great point. It's been a little bit disappointing, to be frank, because I genuinely wanted to work with a lot of Democrats on the other side of the aisle, and I still wanted to work with them. I view us all on the same aisle, frankly, because home ownership and housing affordability is very much there. But I understand that we live in partisan times and whatnot, but we're just focused again on restoring the American dream for all Americans. I think under President Trump's leadership, we'll be able to do that. And I kind of look at the politics as noise. So I'm just staying focused on how do we get mortgages, how do we get good mortgages written, how do we have low costs, and get people in as many homes as possible.
That makes sense. Focus on the mission. And I have to say, I'd love your impression of it. A lot of the, there's not a ton, but a lot of the people who are squawking a little bit among the Democrats, there's a little bit of that. It seems more like unease more than anything else. Like this is not the same as it was before. And it's not clear to me where they'll all end up at the end of the day.
Yeah, I don't know. I just know that, I understand mortgages and housing, and we have a president, thankfully, who's a builder who understands mortgages and housing. And so that's going to be my focus. I'll leave the politics to CNN and Fox News and stuff like that. But we're laser focused on restoring the American dream, and that's what we're going to do.
There's nothing more important and nothing that represents the American dream like the homeowner. I think you should speak to that a little bit to us. This is at the center of, I think, a lot of President Trump's rhetoric over the years. His statesmanship has been about restoring the American dream, especially this time around. And I will say that I think a lot of people in the audience, especially if they're younger, it's astounding, who really don't even know what that phrase means, and they do not think that they will be able, they despair of buying a home.
We have to bring back the American dream of home ownership. I'm very confident that we will. We have a better leader than, frankly, any other country in President Trump. We will get this done. It's just the last 4 years have been very tough for the housing market. To your point, it is a generational asset. It's where you get generational wealth from, in many cases, is from a home. Owning a home is a illiquid security that is not easily disposed of, but that can create a lot of value over a long period of time. And so I think that under President Trump's leadership, we will see that the home will again become a vehicle of wealth, and that the country will be very prosperous as a result.
Well, that's it. That's the frontier. That's where we want to go. Nice. This has been great. I do want to one last question we have to ask. If I have you in the room, which is your Twitter game, very strong. People want to follow the director here. He's very good on social media. Talk to us a little bit about that, because you intend to continue to speak with people, directly from time to time.
Well, the president really innovated social media, and it's interesting because he's older, but he's still very young. And I think that you've had a lot of regulators, but maybe not people who are, in their late 30s or what have you. And so I think it's a real opportunity to communicate with people. And what we've seen, and I think you'll appreciate this, is to your point about fraud, is we put out some tips on fraud. I mean, we see so much information on fraud we can access and get from social media, and we've gotten some great tips. So I think that will continue, and I think social media could be, frankly, a way to, it sounds kind of crazy, but it's very true, eventually bring down some of the cost of mortgages in terms of fraud, waste, and abuse. If we can get people reporting where they see fraud and making sure that the system is as tight and as secure as possible. And that's what we're laser focused on day in and day out.
Well, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
We know it's 2025, but if you heard this recent clip from Illinois Governor Pritzker, you might actually think it's 2020. Watch.
Never before in my life have I called for mass protests, for mobilization, for disruption, but I am now. Republicans cannot know a moment of peace. They have to understand that we will fight their cruelty with every megaphone and microphone that we have. We must castigate them on the soapbox and then punish them at the ballot box.
I mean, what a strange thing to go out there and say that, they can't have a moment of peace, MP.
Similar to 2020, except I don't think it's going to work. We'll see. I think that the crazy thing about it is it's not dissimilar from 2020 in the sense that billionaires funded that too. But here, the billionaire is trying to say outright, he's saying the quiet part out loud, that he is supporting it. So, okay, let's see what happens.
So with all this going on X today, I asked if this is the start of BLM Riots 2.0. So here were some of the best responses. Let's start with Jim. He says, I think this is a signal to the paid agitators to show up wherever Republicans are and cause trouble, such as state houses and town hall events, much like we were saying earlier with Bedford on the show.
Yeah, that's exactly the kind of thing he's set to do. I'm not sure the organization is there, but more importantly, the will is there, or the cover is there. What exactly are you going to be going out and protesting? What exactly is it? Is it sending illegal aliens overseas? So you're right, but I don't think they have the full apparatus up and running yet. We'll see.
Fred Bell brings in MAHA Rushy. He says, not surprised by this. Rush Limbaugh would have nailed Pritzker as a low information liberal savage, stirring up violent rhetoric and chaos because Democrats can't stomach losing. Poor losers, as Rush said, with minds closed tighter than a drum. Now throwing tantrums instead of accepting defeat. I love it when you invoke Rush Limbaugh on this show, so you're always going to get picked.
Exactly. Well, it's an easy way to get on the show for good reason. I mean, this is exactly right. He does want to stir up protests, et cetera, except the only problem is that, an obese billionaire is probably not the guy who's going to stir up protests and get the people in the streets all riled up. This is more of a donor push and a symbolism in my mind. I think if anyone's going to start the riots and lead the charge of the progressive, violence, it's just probably not going to be that guy.
No, let's have John round it out for the day. He says, funny that the totalitarian communist governor calling for protests and disruption in order to regain power calls Republicans tyrants and traitors. They have lost their collective minds. John, correct.
Yeah, this is see the game. There's no game here anymore because you have to say what is the offense? What has Trump done that's tyrannical? And every time you try to explain that, it becomes convoluted very fast. And it didn't used to be the case, but it is now. I don't think there's anything there.
But when you see this, and again, we were just in Washington D.C. So if you're Donald Trump, you still have a lot of people that think this way, that have jobs in the federal government. So it's not only just going out there and bringing the new people like our team in, they have to get all of the rot out of it as well.
Yeah, I mean, make no mistake, the resistance is still real. The resistance is there. It's a question of how it will resist. And as time goes on over these next 2 years, you will see rising resistance in ways probably, Jill, that we didn't expect. I mean, so prepare for that. But here's what we know. Let me start with the positive. If you're going to start an organization from scratch, you want to find the most talented people possible, the most talented team possible, and bring them together. And the way you do that is by a positive, compelling vision of what you want to accomplish. And that's number one. So you bring those people together with a vision they're excited about, and you have the talent. Now, the next thing that happens is you have to organize those people in some way with some hierarchy and get them going and moving on the quest. When you do that, there's usually some ego battles and battles for control. And if the organization survives those battles and sort of settles, then it's off to the races. Next, the biggest problem becomes, if you're successful, if it all works, is that you'll have a lot of people who come to your company just to maintain position, or any organization, right? And so then you want to get rid of complacency and people who are just there really not for the goal, not to achieve, but to maintain their place, right, within the status quo. So reverse that. That's the situation the administration has. You have millions of people who want to maintain position. They're not all bad. Some of them are good, right? But you have more people than you can imagine in the organization that is the federal government who merely want to maintain position. It doesn't change out like a business does. And so how are you going to get rid of them? They already assembled under a vision that if you disagree with, you have to assume their liberal vision that's been in place in government for almost 100 years. If you question it at all, you're considered insane. The vision is almost gone. And now you have an order and a hierarchy that they built, a system that they built precisely to maintain their position. So the Trump administration is faced with a difficult, indeed monumental task. I mean, how do you accomplish this? There's no way around it but to fight 360 degrees all around for all those things I just mentioned. You have to reorganize the system so that the people maintaining position are disturbed and get the hell out and drive them out. And you have to bring talent in with a compelling vision of the future of what this thing ought to be doing. And doing all of that at once is obviously a difficult thing, but it is something that I think this administration understands. Many people within it understand, and they're all trying to do it, moving in the same direction.
It's so funny because I saw a leftist, clearly a leftist woman who was her job was cut in the federal government. And she was very upset by this. And she doesn't understand why this mean administration is coming out and taking her job away. And she's very well educated. She should still have a job. And now she's taking to social media and posting videos. So that'll be fun to follow. More people like that. But it is exactly the point that you're saying, right? There are so many people that still need to be just really just fired from their jobs at this point in time, if not just the entire department cut.
Yeah, and you still need to bring talent in and reorganize in a way where it makes sense. Some stuff you can just get rid of, but for instance, take the CIA. I mean, John Brennan, when he was in charge there, was bragging about, and forget what you think about LGBTQ issues, he was bragging about his biggest accomplishment was DEI, basically, when it came to sexual matters. What the hell that has to do with the CIA's job? I don't know. I don't think it has anything to do with the job. But that was a long time ago now. So you have, at a place like the CIA, you have an enormous percentage, right? The majority of people there are now there under the auspices of the DEI regime and God knows whatever awful things they're doing. So this is an enormous task because you need talented people to come in to reorg it, right? You have to change the way it's organized because it's organized to protect them. And then you have to find a mission that's actually good and move towards that.
Well, potentially one of the best people in the Trump administration we actually had a chance to chat with, and he'll be on the show tomorrow for everybody. Dr. Jay Bhattacharya will be the interview that we bring to you tomorrow. It'll be our final one from our time there on Media Row. But what a great one to have access to, and just to pick his brain and see how everything's going, because he has a very influential job as director of NIH.
Yeah, here's an incredibly talented guy who is incredibly brave. This interview is very good. I mean, Jill does an incredible job, and they just sit down and chat. And you really, watching that interview, because I was just standing there, behind the cameras, watching that interview really brought home to me how far we have come and how amazing it is that this administration is hiring people like that, bringing in, BlazeTV to cover it. And it's a very friendly place. It's a place where sort of all the superstars are getting together. And that was the vibe the entire trip, really. I mean, we spent a lot of time talking to people in the administration, but just around town. And, as opposed to the beginning initial excitement, now it's starting to really pick up. I mean, you have new private clubs being established. You have restaurants that are doing gangbuster business where everyone's sort of on the right wink, wink goes. And you sense, and in the administration itself, they're starting to do increasingly serious things. It's not just EOs anymore. And you can feel that energy taking off.
And you can actually go walk the streets and feel safe in our nation's capital. What a novel concept to actually just be able to go walk around the monuments and feel okay. I mean, you can see the families are back. We saw a lot of families that were on vacation there, and the tour groups of America's youth are definitely back in full force as well.
No, I mean, I couldn't help but do the whole thing where you look at the Jefferson Memorial. They've been working on it for a long time over the past years to get rid of this algae that had darkened it, and it's just gleaming there, all beautiful, uncovered, and places where there used to be homeless, they're not there anymore. So I don't want to pour it on too thick, but that is the way it feels. I mean, that we're bringing you, that is the way it feels now. It really is this incredible place again, and you can feel it if you go there.
I love it because Donald Trump was about an hour late for his interview with Glenn. And the reason was to put a gigantic flag up in front of the White House, right? Like, we're going to take that. And the winning has yet to cease. And we are absolutely okay with that. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you back here tomorrow night.
Happy days here again, but we will hold you accountable.
We will.